अहो चित्रमहो चित्रम् वन्दे तत्प्रेमबन्धनम् यद्बद्धं मुक्तिदं मुक्तम् ब्रह्मक्रीडाभृगीकृतम् वन्दे वृन्दावनानन्दा राधिका परमेश्वरी गोपिका परमां शुद्धा लादिनी शक्तिरूपिणी यो ब्रह्माणं विदधाति पूर्वं यो वै वेदांश्च प्रहिणोति तस्मै तग्मंह देवमात्मबुद्धिप्रकाशं मुमुक्षुर्वै शरणमहं प्रपद्ये. The divine souls. We'll have a few minutes of Nam Sankirtan, and after that I'll take up tonight's topic of religions of the world. Radhe Radhe Govinda Govinda Radhe 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 Govinda Govinda Radhe
Radhe Radhe Govinda Govinda Radhe 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 Govinda Govinda Radhe
Radhe Radhe Govinda Govinda Radhe 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 Govinda Govinda Radhe
Radhe Radhe Govinda Govinda Radhe 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 Govinda Govinda Radhe
Radhe Radhe Govinda Govinda Radhe 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 Govinda Govinda Radhe
Radhe Radhe Govinda Govinda Radhe 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 Govinda Govinda Radhe
Radhe Radhe Govinda Govinda Radhe 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 Govinda Govinda Radhe
Radhe Radhe Govinda Govinda Radhe 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 Govinda Govinda Radhe
Radhe Radhe Govinda Govinda Radhe
Radhe Radhe Govinda Govinda Radhe
Radhe Radhe Govinda गोविंद गोविंद राधे 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 गोविंद गोविंद राधे
राधे राधे गोविंद गोविंद राधे 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 गोविंद गोविंद राधे
राधे गोविंद गोविंद राधे 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 गोविंद गोविंद राधे
राधे राधे गोविंद गोविंद राधे 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 गोविंद गोविंद राधे
राधे गोविंद गोविंद राधे 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 गोविंद गोविंद राधे
राधे राधे गोविंद गोविंद राधे 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 गोविंद गोविंद राधे
राधे गोविंद गोविंद राधे 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 गोविंद गोविंद राधे
राधे राधे गोविंद गोविंद राधे 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 गोविंद गोविंद
राधे राधे गोविंद गोविंद राधे
राधे राधे गोविंद गोविंद
राधे राधे गोविंद गोविंद राधे
राधे राधे गोविंद गोविंद
राधे राधे गोविंद गोविंद राधे 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 गोविंद गोविंद राधे
राधे राधे गोविंद गोविंद राधे 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 गोविंद गोविंद
राधे राधे गोविंद गोविंद राधे 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 गोविंद गोविंद राधे
राधे राधे गोविंद गोविंद राधे 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 गोविंद गोविंद
राधे राधे गोविंद गोविंद राधे 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 गोविंद गोविंद राधे
राधे राधे गोविंद गोविंद राधे 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 गोविंद गोविंद
राधे राधे गोविंद गोविंद राधे 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 गोविंद गोविंद राधे
राधे राधे गोविंद गोविंद राधे 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 गोविंद गोविंद
राधे राधे गोविंद गोविंद राधे
राधे राधे गोविंद गोविंद
राधे राधे गोविंद गोविंद राधे
राधे राधे गोविंद गोविंद
राधे राधे गोविंद गोविंद राधे 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 गोविंद गोविंद राधे
राधे राधे गोविंद गोविंद राधे 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 गोविंद गोविंद राधे
राधे Radhe Govind Govind Radhe 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 Govind Govind Radhe
Radhe Radhe Govind Govind Radhe 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 Govind Govind Radhe
Oh Radhe Radhe Govind Govind Radhe 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 Govind Govind Radhe
Radhe Radhe Govind Govind Radhe 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 Govind Govind Radhe
Radhe Radhe Govind Govind Radhe 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 Govind Govind Radhe
Radhe Radhe Govind Govind Radhe 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 Govind Govind Radhe
बोलो लाडली लाल की Radhe Radhe, everyone. We'll be continuing where we left off, and as I mentioned, I want to discuss about Hinduism and the other religions of the world. At this time, there are quite a few religions in the world, like Hinduism, originally called Sanatan Dharma or Vedic Sanatan Dharma. There's Bauddha Dharma, Buddhism, Jain Dharma, Sikh Dharma, Confucian Dharma in China, Shinto Dharma in Japan, Tao Dharma or Lao Tzu Dharma in China, Jewish Dharma or Yahudi Dharma, Islam Dharma, Christian Dharma, 11 main types of Dharma in the world. So nowadays, in this global community that we live in, we interact with pretty much everybody. I left out one, what's called Zoroastrianism. It's one more Dharma, Parsi Dharma. So since we're interacting with members of all these different religions, we've had to learn how to do that in a civil way and in a polite way. So one of the things that's been commonly said is that all religions are the same. And I understand someone wanting to be inclusive and polite to people who follow other dharma, but the blanket statement, all religions are the same, is not actually correct. There is some unity between religions, but there are also differences. For instance, on a very basic level, out of these 11 types of dharma that I just mentioned to you, some are Ishwarvadi, some are Anishwarvadi. In other words, some describe about God and some don't. Obviously, Sanatan Dharma is Ishwarvadi, but Jain Dharma doesn't have any description of Bhagwan. Bauddha Dharma has no description of God. So these are called Anishwarvadi Dharma. So on a very basic level, obviously, if some are describing God and some aren't, there are definitely some differences. Among those religions that are Ishwarvadi, that have some description of God, And even with those religions that don't have a description of God, anyone who worships God is worshiping the same God. So on this point, we definitely have unity. And perhaps that's what people mean when they say all religions are the same, even though the statement itself could be misleading, but perhaps they mean we're all worshiping the same God. That is a correct statement. There's only one God. There's not a separate Christian God and a separate Jewish God and a separate Hindu God. There's one God, not just for our Earth planet, but for the whole universe. Anyone, anywhere in the existence who worships God worships the same God. We have many names, many ways of describing God. Anantanam Rupaya, our Vedas say that God's names and forms are unlimited. But God can only be one. You see, the Ishwarvadi religions also would be able to agree on, or we could find unity in a basic description of God's characteristics. Like if you said, God is eternal. No one ever created God. God has been here forever. No one would argue that point. It doesn't matter what religion they're from. If you say God is omnipresent, no one would argue that point. Everybody knows God is everywhere. If you said God is all-knowing, omniscient, of course. I grew up going to Catholic school, and I was taught as a little boy that God knows your every thought. We teach the same thing in Hinduism. So there are certain basic principles that are definitely common to all the Ishwarvadi religions. God is divine. God is perfect. God is kind. God is all-powerful. God is absolute, unlimited, infinite, beyond human perception, beyond human intelligence, beyond human capabilities. Everyone would agree on all of these things. And since God is absolute and unlimited, if we accept this point, then it means God can only be one. If there were even two gods, neither would be absolute or unlimited, because where one begins, the other one has to stop. The other one would have to end somewhere, and then the other one would begin. So this God would be here, this God would be here. Neither would be unlimited, and neither would be absolute. So it would defy the very definition of God if there were more than one God. Eko Devaha, a simple statement from our scriptures, Shvetashvatara Upanishad. Ekameva dvitiyam brahma neha nanasti kinchana. Chandogya Upanishad says even more emphatically, there is only one God, there is no second God. There is one God only. So there is unity. It doesn't matter that we describe him differently and call him by different names, every religion is worshiping the same God. So this philosophy is definitely in Hinduism. This is one of the reasons Hinduism is considered to be inclusive. It means we accept other religions, we accept other ways of worshiping God and absorb it into our own philosophy and our own dharma. So we accept it. It's fine. Koi jhagda nahi hai that someone else is calling God by a different name or describing God in a different way. That doesn't bother us at all. So Hinduism is inclusive in that way. We know, okay, you describe him this way, call him by that name. We have a slightly different description and some different names, but it's the same God. This much unifies us with all the religions of the world. Knowing this, however, we also need to appreciate the parts of Sanatana Dharma that distinguish it from other religions. And when I say distinguish it, it doesn't mean to say that this is right and that's wrong. In many cases, simply the description is not even there in other religious books or religions of the world. Or it's not there at the same detail, not at the level of detail that we have in our scriptures of Sanatana Dharma. For instance, if you ask a simple question like, what exists? What is the totality of existence? Vedas come immediately and say, Trividham Brahma me tat. There's one Supreme Lord, but there are three eternal tattva. There are three eternal existences. Brahma, Jeev, and Maya. God, the souls, and the material energy. Where did they come from? As I mentioned, you may find other answers in the world which will agree with God didn't come from anywhere. He is eternal. But only in Sanatana Dharma will you find the answer, souls are also eternal. Maya is also eternal. Because na sato vidyate bhavo, na bhavo vidyate satah. Gita. Stating the first law of thermodynamics before scientists had ever stated it. Energy cannot be created or destroyed. If something exists today, it must have existed forever. And I don't mean the physical forms of the universe. I mean the actual tattva, the essential, substantial existence must have existed forever. And if something doesn't exist, it can never come into existence. Energy cannot be created or destroyed. So if souls exist today, they must have existed since eternity and will always exist. If Maya, if this material energy exists today, it must have always existed. Even God didn't create it. Take another simple question. See, we have the totality of existence in three words, Brahma, Jeev, Maya. That's not found anywhere else. Amazing, right? Because you sit here and you listen to Kripaluji Maharaj's lectures every day and you hear Brahma, Jeev, Maya every day. That knowledge isn't available anywhere else but our Vedas and other affiliated scriptures. Another basic question which I addressed on the very first day, what is the aim of life? And how we understood that every soul desires happiness. Okay, you may say, other religions will also say that. Yes, but will they have an answer for why do we desire happiness? No, only Vedas. The only place in the entire world where you can find the answer to why do we desire happiness. I had explained that to you. We're Ansh of God. Every Ansh is attracted to his Anshi. And our Anshi, Shri Krishna, happens to be the very form of perfect happiness. Therefore, we desire him, or we desire perfect happiness. The description of Srishti is not found anywhere else in the universe. Just this basic fact, that the material energy, Maya, exists eternally, but not always in the same state. It has two states of existence, Srishti and Pralay. So in Srishti, God has activated the material energy and it has unfolded according to its own inborn material qualities of Sattva, Raj, Tam. It has unfolded into the visible form of this physical universe. And for as long as God upholds the functioning of this Mayic energy in its active state, the universe will continue to exist. And when he withdraws, then the universe merges into him. We call that pralay. But the energy wasn't destroyed. It just enters into God in a dormant form, in an absolutely subtle or unmanifest form. And then he again activates it and the universe is again produced. So he doesn't create anything. He dissolves it into himself and then releases it. Srishti means to release, not to create. Technically, that's what it means. Srij comes from the root word srij, which means to release. And pralay doesn't mean destruction. No, le, leen hona, to merge into, to dissolve into. Souls are also not killed at the time of pralay. Those souls who aren't God realized in the divine world, they merge into God and await the next srishti in a type of dormant state as well. So souls were never created. They've been in this cycle of srishti and pralay forever. When was the first srishti? There never was a first one. When will the last one be? There will never be a last one. Imagine that. We can't imagine that. An eternal cycle that never began and will never end. And our existence from eternity in this Mayic existence. Even the depth of detail for how Maya unfolds. It starts as Mool Prakriti Maya, as a completely, absolutely subtle and unmanifest energy. And when God activates it and the three gunas separate from their merged state into three and become active, that's called Mahan. The time energy is also activated. The next phase, each one is less subtle. So the next phase is called Ahankar. It's out of this that all of this very subtle energy that all of our minds are made. After that, Panchatan Matra, the subtle instincts of the five material elements. Then Panchikarn. At this stage, God becomes omnipresent in the universe. Like I described, Garbhodashayi, his second avatar. After that, Panchamahabhut, the five material elements, but not yet individually manifested. The next phase sees the actual manifestation, physical manifestation of the five prime elements. Akash is first. That's space. Imagine from Prakriti, Mahan, Ahankar, Panchatanmatra, Panchikarn, Panchamahabhut. Up until this, no physical manifestation, and yet there's a description. In other words, it doesn't matter how far science evolves, we'll never be able to access those levels of the creation or the unfoldment of the universe. So all of that was before the physical manifestation of space. Once space manifests, that's called Akash. Within the space, uncountable different pockets of movement start occurring. That's called Vayu. Within that, now, the first particles, hydrogen atoms, emerge. Not hydrogen atoms, precursor even to hydrogen atoms. You can say the first particles, subparticles, that start combining and light is produced. So that's called tej, energy, visible energy. Then those subparticles start annihilating and combining, and the first simple atoms are produced. hydrogen or water, we call jal in our scriptures. And after that, scientists know what happened. Gravity predominates and eventually physical matter is produced, and we call that Prithvi. After that, Brahma takes over. In each individual Brahmand, an individual Brahma is produced by Kshirodashai Vishnu and given the knowledge and the power to complete the creation of that individual Brahmand. So imagine, I just gave you a very brief description. Think of the technical detail produced in our scriptures about how the universe is manifested. You won't find even an ounce of that in any other philosophy in the world. We have answers for questions like, why do bad things happen to good people? Because we have the concept of karma and rebirth. So we understand that we've lived unlimited past lifetimes and we have an unlimited stock of karma that we've done in previous lifetimes, that it doesn't all fructify or give us the results in every life. So we have a backlog. Plus we have the ones from our most recent life, some of that. And it's given to us to undergo as a prarabdha or a destiny in this life. And simultaneously we're doing new actions because our thoughts are not destined. That's our free will. Neither are our words or what we do with our body. So that's called kriyaman karma. The big stock, the backlog, sanchit karma. The small part of that given to us to undergo as our destiny, meaning the good and bad things that will happen to a person in their life, that's prarabdha karma, and the free will actions we perform every moment, kriyaman karma. So even though my kriyaman karma may be very good in this life, I may still have some bad in my prarabdha because of things I've done in previous lifetimes. So we have a simple logical answer for why bad things happen to good people. Just because you're good in this life doesn't mean you've never done anything bad. Why do people die young? Why do babies die? Yes, every soul is given an exact amount of time to inhabit a body. Before you're born, your prarabdha has been decided, and one of the things that's determined by prarabdha is to the second, how long are you going to live? It's not a sad thing. There's no such thing as dying too young, an untimely death, a tragic death. No. Death comes at the pre-appointed time. And dying is just changing bodies. What's the big deal? The ones who are left behind miss the person who left their body. There's nothing to get upset about. So we have all of this philosophy in Sanatana Dharma. As I described to you yesterday, we have a very deep philosophy of many forms of one God. See, in other religions, there's that general description, which I said is common among all the Ishwarvadi religions, about God being all-powerful and all-knowing and omnipresent and perfect and divine. That description is a very general description. Hinduism goes into so much more detail. We go to the point of having a chemical formula for God. You've heard it, you probably just never thought of it in this way. Sat Chit Anand. That's the chemical formula for God. What is God, right? You want to know, okay, what is this liquid? So we analyzed it, we found out it's 2 hydrogen atoms and 1 oxygen atom makes a water molecule. It's H2O. So we have the chemical formula for this substance. What about God? What is He? Oh, He is Anand. He is the very form of perfect happiness, unlimited, everlasting, and ever increasing. So the Anand word means essentially what he is, and that word is qualified by the other two words, Sat and Chit. Sat meaning eternally existing, and Chit meaning alive, aware, a conscious, sentient being. That is God. So we have such detailed descriptions, and as I explained, that one single God has, actually I haven't explained this yet, part of it. One single God has three main powers: Maya Shakti, with which he manifests the universe; Jeev Shakti, that includes all the unlimited souls; and then his Yoga Maya Shakti, which I referred to. It's also called Swarup Shakti. That's his personal power. And then based upon his Sat Chit Anand nature, his personal power has three facets. Sat aspect of his personal power, Sat aspect of Swarup Shakti, is called Sandhini Shakti. That's the almightiness of God. With that Sandhini Shakti, God's form is manifested, his abodes are manifested. He performs all the great actions like creating the universe or manifesting the universe, maintaining the universe, dissolving the universe, keeping track of all the souls' karma and giving them their outcomes, consequences. Sandhini Shakti. Then the Chit aspect of his Swarup Shakti is Samvit Shakti. It's with this power that God is all-knowing. And because of this power as well, his blissfulness is ever increasing. His beauty is ever increasing. His sweetness is ever increasing. And the Anand aspect manifests as Ahladini Shakti, the power of bliss. With this, God remains ever blissful. And when a soul surrenders to God, the soul also receives Sat Chit Anand in unlimited amount. So the soul becomes like God. The soul doesn't become God, but becomes like God because God gives us his Swarup Shakti. So we become Swarup Shakti Yukt. See the detail? Where would you find that? There's nothing even approaching even 0.1% of this detail, and I'm just telling you in general. I'm giving you a brief overview of a few of the explanations of Sanatana Dharma. Based on all of this, we understood that one single Supreme God has three categories of his own manifestation: Bhagwan, Paramatma, and Brahm. So the one single God who is worshipped by everybody, we know in Hinduism that he manifests himself as formless, in certain almighty forms, and in his loving forms as well, like Sitaram, Radha Krishna. So although other religions are describing the same God, their description is a paragraph at most. That's why people say, oh, Hindus say, oh, Hinduism is so complicated. Why couldn't it be more simple? If you wanted simple, you could stay in kindergarten. If you want your PhD, you have to study a little to understand. I've heard so many people say, oh, in other religions, it's so simple to understand. Yeah, that's because the total description of God can fit in one paragraph in most of these other philosophies. That's not to say they're wrong. It's just a superficial, vague description of God, very brief. Hinduism gives you the PhD course in that same God that they're talking about, but with all the details. What are his powers? What are his qualities? What are his forms? What are his abodes? What are his leelas? What are all the different ways that you can attain him? So it's an enormous amount of information. It's not something that can be learned even in a few days of study. So this is why sometimes Hinduism seems very complicated, because it goes into a great deal of detail. And of course, if there are unqualified people interpreting that detail, then that creates more confusion, and it's harder for the general public to get a correct understanding of all of this information. That's why great personalities like Sri Kripaluji Maharaj are so important. The way that he summarizes, takes the essence, gives it to us in an understandable way, reconciling all the apparent contradictions that these details seem to contain. That's why it's so important to have great personalities like him who come and visit this earth and help us. One more thing I'll point out, and then I'll summarize and wrap up. Hinduism is the only religion that distinguishes between Swarg and Divyalok. See, within the material realm, we have Mrityulok, this place we are now, and we have Swarg and Narak, heaven and hell. Christianity also refers to heaven and hell. Some other religions also refer to heaven and hell. In Hinduism, we have, of course, more detail. The detail explains to us that you don't go to Swarg forever. You don't go to Narak forever. No one has ever gone to Swarg forever or Narak forever, because you do a certain amount of good deeds in your life, so you go to Swarg if you did that many good deeds, but your good deeds get used up as you're enjoying in Swarg, so you're rewarded, but it's a temporary, limited reward, and then you have to come back here. The same thing is true when you go to Narak. In your life, you would have done a lot of bad to earn a trip to Narak, but it's still limited. So you go to Narak, you suffer some consequences, some punishment, and then you're released and you come back here. But all of that is within Maya. And God is beyond Maya. So just doing good actions is not enough to reach God, because good will only take you to heaven temporarily. You have to surrender to God wholeheartedly, and then with His grace, you transcend Maya and you enter the divine world. And then I explained previously how even within the divine realm, there are all those different options, 3 main options, but even within that, there are many subcategories of ways that you can attain God, types of divine bliss, Brahmanand, Aishwaryanand, Premanand. Even within Premanand, you have Prema Bhakti, Sneha Bhakti, Man Bhakti, Pranay Bhakti, Rag Bhakti, Anurag Bhakti, Bhavavesh Bhakti, Mahabhav Bhakti. 8 levels of Premanand, and even within Mahabhav you have many levels. So it's an overwhelming amount of detail that we have in our Hindu scriptures. And all of this information is necessary. It might not all be necessary for every single person, but all of it is necessary according to the time and place and people involved. So hopefully I've given you some idea of the greatness of the knowledge that's contained in our scriptures of Sanatana Dharma. And let me wrap up by explaining one more thing. Sanatana Dharma means eternal Dharma. Dharma, you can say it's like guidelines. Like when you buy a car or a vacuum cleaner, it comes with an instruction manual. Dharma is like the instruction manual for the human birth. How are you supposed to live your life? So that you use this instrument for what it was meant, in the way it was meant. Since we are eternal, and the cycle of Srishti and Pralaya is eternal, it means our need for guidance is also eternal. So it makes sense that Dharma is eternal. And the way that that dharma is produced in the world is also eternal, Vedas. The books are not eternal, but the knowledge is eternal. Sanatan Dharma, in modern times, called Hinduism, is an eternal dharma. It's never changed. It's been there in every srishti. When this srishti is finished and we have pralay, the next srishti will happen. The same Vedas, Gita, Mahabharata, Puranas will be produced. The same Vedas are in other Brahmans, in other places in this galaxy and all over this universe. The same Sanatan Dharma, the same Radha Krishna, Sitaram, in every Brahman. You see, even within Hinduism, we have certain Sampradaya, right? So you have Sanatan Dharma, that's the eternal path to God. Like Bhakti, it's the eternal, universal path to God, the supreme Dharma. But along the way, over time, according to the teachings of a particular saint, a Sampradaya, a lineage of followers of that saint, starts. That Sampradaya is not eternal. It started at a certain point and it will finish at a certain point. So Sanatan Dharma is eternal, Sampradaya are not eternal. Similarly, you can think of other religions like Sampradaya. They were started by a certain religious personality or saint at a certain time for certain people who required certain teachings. And people started following that, and up until today, they're following. But those Sampradaya, or we call them other religions, they started at a certain point, and they will eventually finish. Sanatan Dharma never started and will never finish. If you go on other earth planets, you'll also find at certain times, not in Satyug, or Dwapar, or Treta, only in Kalyug, you'll find other religions. And those other religions over there, in other Brahmans, they'll be different than the other religions here. But Sanatan Dharma will be common to everybody. This is why Shri Krishna says, Ye yatha mam prapadyante tas tathaiva bhajamyaham Mama vartamanu vartante manushyaha partha sarvashah. Such a deep statement from the Gita. Arjun, every person, every soul who worships God is worshiping me. They're all worshiping me in their own way. However they worship me, I become that for them. I take that form for them. So I already talked yesterday about how Shri Krishna is avatari, and he takes all the forms that we know about that are described in Hinduism. But what he's saying goes even beyond that. Yes, he is saying, if you worship me as Shiva, I'll come as Shiva. If you worship me as Vishnu, I'll come as Vishnu. He is saying that. But he's also saying people of other religions are also worshiping me. Of course, it's the same God, just they call it God, which is a general description, a general name, and we say Krishna, which is more specific. So they're also worshiping Krishna. I may not say that to a person because that could be taken in the wrong way. Someone could take offense to that, but I don't mean it in an offensive way. There's one God. That God is Krishna. Everybody in the whole world and whole universe worships him in a different way, in their own way, describe him differently. And they may not accept that they're worshiping him, but he says they are. Everybody's worshiping me because there's only one God. Okay, one last thing. a shocking statement. You cannot attain God. Nobody can attain God. Why not? For the same reason you can't buy a car or eat fruit. You say, what are you talking about? I've bought many cars and I've eaten fruit many times. No, you've never bought a car. You can't even buy, let's make it more specific. Let's say you want to buy a Honda. You can't even buy a Honda. No, you can't. You have to buy a specific model of a specific year with specific options. You can buy a 2017 Honda Civic. I don't know that much about cars. You probably have to get even more specific. Is it the L model or the E model or whatever it may be? You can buy a specific car. You can't buy a car. A car doesn't exist. Specific cars exist. Just like fruit doesn't exist. I challenge you right now, bring me some fruit so I can eat it. None of you can bring me fruit. Fruit doesn't even exist. Fruit is an abstract concept, a word that includes all the specific types of fruit like mangoes and strawberries and lychee and blueberries. So I can eat mango, I can eat a blueberry, but I can't eat fruit. Fruit is not an actual thing that can be eaten. Similarly, God is just a word we use to indicate the supreme power. Nobody can attain God. Nobody can see God. Nobody can know God. You can see Krishna. You can touch Krishna. You can know Ram. You can attain Vishnu. So you can attain God in a specific form, just like you can paint this wall a specific color. But you can't paint it color. Color does not exist. You can paint it blue, you can paint it yellow. So you can attain Ram or Krishna or Vishnu or Shiva or formless God. But you can't just attain God, because that is just a vague word to indicate the supreme existence. The reason I'm telling you this is, again, to point out both the commonality and the distinguishing features of Hinduism and other religions. So yes, we're all talking about the same supreme power, but every other religion refers to that supreme power in a very vague way, like saying fruit, color, a car. Hinduism is the only place, our Vedas, Puranas, the writings of our saints, the only place where you can find the actual details so that you can actually pinpoint, this is my goal. I want to attain this form of God. And not only that, I want to have this particular relationship. Do you want Dasya Bhav, Sakhya Bhav, Vatsalya Bhav, Madhurya Bhav? How? See, even saying, I want to attain Krishna, even that's not specific enough. What bhav do you have? That's going to determine the exact attainment and exact type of bliss that you'll get. It's like having the correct address, the exact address programmed into your GPS. You'll get there. But if you just get off, let's say somebody comes from overseas and they land at JFK in New York, and they got a visitor's visa to come because they wanted to search for their friend who moved to America a long time ago. So they land at the airport and they inquire from the first person they meet, maybe the customs officer or immigration officer. Excuse me, sir, I've come looking for my friend. He would say, do you know your friend's name? No, I don't know his name. Do you have a picture of him? Do you know what he looks like? No, it's been too long. I forget what he looks like. I have no picture, no description of him. Do you have the address where he lives? No. But I want to find my friend. The person you're asking will consider you to be insane. That how did you think you would find your friend with no information? Similarly, we need all the detail, we need the specifics to know exactly what we're aiming for and how to get there. So this is obviously a distinguishing feature of Hinduism that makes Sanatana Dharma great. And we're lucky to have been given the opportunity to hear this knowledge, learn this knowledge, and apply it in our life. We have 2 more days left in this series, and in those days, I'm going to deal with 2 issues. One I briefly mentioned, that there are many paths to God. Even in our scriptures of Sanatana Dharma, where we have so much detail, there are also many paths described. Spiritual paths, good practices. Why? Why not just make it simple? So why are there so many paths? And which one is the right path to follow? That will be the topic for tomorrow. And on the final day, I'll take up another issue which I briefly mentioned, which is that even within the path of bhakti, there are so many Sampradaya, there have been so many saints, and there are so many scriptures of bhakti. And if you look at all of this, it can seem very confusing. That why do we have all these saints? Why do we have all these Sampradaya? Why do we have all these different scriptures teaching all different ways to do bhakti? So why and which way is correct? If there is such an answer, we'll also find that out on the last day, Thursday. But tomorrow I'll take up the question of the paths to God. Why are there so many paths and which one is correct? And now we'll finish with a few minutes of Nam Sankirtan. Today I had the kids do a quick art project. They had to create a devotional pizza or a devotional pie. So they cut out one piece of colored paper that represented when we were in here earlier in the day for 15 minutes. We were doing some kirtan and offering bhog. So I said, cut out a round piece of paper that represents 15 minutes. That's the physical devotion you did. That circle represents the 15 minutes of physical devotion. But God doesn't note that. God notes what was going on inside. So I want you to cut out another piece of round paper that represents proportionally how much of that time was your mind in God. And hide it behind the bigger circle. Because no one else can see where your mind is, right? So let's say you spent 5 minutes out of the 15 minutes. So if this is the physical circle, then this would be the mental circle. And it would hide behind that physical circle. Everybody else would see you did 15 minutes of devotion, and God would see you did 5 minutes of devotion. So we discussed like that, and then we practiced again in class. We did a few minutes of kirtan and tried to see if we could expand the ratio and make our mental circle bigger. So the reason I'm telling you that is just so you can also think about when we're doing the kirtan for the next few minutes and when we're doing arti at the end, where is your mind? Are you doing Rup Dhyan of Radha Krishna? Are you thinking of them and their qualities and their leelas while we do the chanting? Or are you just doing the physical devotion? So let's all engross our mind in thinking of Radha Krishna as we do some chanting. Radhe Radhe Govinda Govinda Radhe 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 Govinda Govinda राधे वृंदावन बिहारी लाल की
जय।
We can stand for Aarti.